All right, welcome everyone. This time it's for real to the eGrabber and the Guru Selling Systems webinar on the 3 steps to create high response lead generation. We've been joined on the panel today by Erik. He is formerly known as the Bruce Lee of sales, and he's from the Guru Selling Systems. Thanks, Erik, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, great. Clinton is also here as well, and he is the product manager and chief software architect at eGrabber. Clinton, nice of you to join as well.
Good. Thanks, Rich. Hi, folks.
Fantastic. All right, the voice that you hear, that's me, Rich Kumar. I'll be your moderator for today. If you do have any questions, I can now see that the chat box is working, so just put in your questions on the chat box, and I'll direct your questions to Erik or Clinton. All right? And you can also follow us at eGrabber.com. If you do have any questions for us, please go ahead and tweet them. You can follow Erik at Erik Lewis and then Clinton at Clinton Bazario. Those are the Twitter handles. All right, without further ado, I'm going to switch presenters, and I'm going to make Erik the presenter. Erik, the show is all yours.
Okay. Let's get this. Okay, show my screen, and I've got to close up a bunch of stuff here now. For you folks at home, you can't see I got a whole big bunch of boxes here that I got to close. All right. So let's get going, and I think we're ready to roll. All right. So again, apologies for the delays. Let's get right on into it and see how fast we can go here. So by a show of hands, I know everybody's busy, so we'll keep this fast. By a show of hands, how many of you wonder, where are all the qualified leads? All those people I keep hearing about are supposed to be qualified to buy my stuff. How many of you wonder, how can I connect with those qualified leads? And finally, how many of you wonder, how can I get those qualified leads to contact me, to actually open my message and read it and watch it, whatever, get back to me so I can sell them something? Well, the good news is if you have any of those questions, you have come to the right place. My name is Erik Lewis, and I am lovingly known as the Bruce Lee of sales and lead generation. I am the creator of the Guru Selling System, and I'm the author of the book Be Do Sale. And I'd like to welcome you to today's presentation, which is the 3 steps to create high-response lead generation messages. Now, before we begin, I'd like to take a moment and I'd like to say thank you. Now, right now, all of you on this call are making an investment. I might be sitting there eating your breakfast or your lunch or whatever, just kind of hanging out, but you are investing the single most precious resource you have, which is your time. And I have an appreciation of time that most people, and I hope to God none of you, ever has to have. See, 9 years ago, 1 month before my wedding, I was at the gym. I'm 6 foot tall. I was 190 pounds. I was doing tricep pushdowns. I've been doing martial arts for 10 years. I was in great shape. I had a heart attack. They rolled me out of there. They took me to the hospital. They put me in this dark room, slammed me down on this ice-cold slab, and I just kept, and I didn't know if I was going to live or die. I literally am laying there. I'm like, I'm terrified for my life. And I kept thinking to myself, but I'm not done. I'm not done. I'm not done. I'm not done. I have so much more to do. I'm not done. Thank God, I'm not done. Since then, I got out of that room, and I got married, and I have 3 beautiful children. I have a career that I love. I get to work with wonderful folks like you all day, and they carry with me for the rest of my life. Let me get rid of that technical jargon there. Oops, and here we go. Right back to technical stuff. And so I carry with me for the rest of my life this appreciation of time. And so even if you don't have that much value for your time, I do. And as my way of saying thank you over the course of the next hour, I want to help you to create more powerful lead generation messages so you can get more sales, you can make more money, and ultimately take that money, because the whole point of money is not to have money. The whole point of money is what you do with it, so that you can make more sales, make more money, and have the lifestyle and enjoy that life with your family, with your friends, etc., so that you can really have the quality of life that you desire. So from the bottom of my still beating heart, thank you very much for being here. Now, what are we going to be talking about today? Well, first, we're going to talk about why no one cares to hear about what you do or what you sell. Secondly, we're going to be talking about how one word can be the difference between no sales and a ton of sales. Third, we're going to be talking about the one tweak you can make immediately to get prospects calling right now. And for those of you who are interested, we're going to talk about how you can go further with the information you'll be hearing today. Now, who the heck am I, and why should you listen to me? Well, I'll skip over all the awkward childhood and teenage year stuff, and I'll go to what's pertinent for us. So out of college, I spent the first 10 years of my professional life working for several large corporations in Manhattan. And classic story, I literally started as a temp in a mailroom. I worked my way from temp in a mailroom to full-time in the mailroom, then I worked my way out of the mailroom, then I worked my way up to a supervisor level, then to a manager level, and ultimately to a director level. And at my last job, I was living the dream. I had over 120 employees across multiple sites reporting to me. I had the big office. I had the secretary. This was back in 2000, so I had one of those cell phones that was both a cell phone, but you could also click it and talk to anybody you wanted to instantly. I had a pager. I had, free lunch. I had all the trappings. And I was living the dream, and I was hating every freaking minute of it because I was stressed from 12 to 12. I was working. I was in the office from 7 to 7, but I was stressed out of my mind from midnight to midnight. It never ended. And I had to do office politics, which I'm horrible at. And so after a while of that job, I just said, okay, and 10 years in corporate America, I'm like, I'm done. I'm done being a slave to the grind. So I left corporate America in terms of full-time employment, but I only wandered about 1/4 of an inch because I ended up becoming a consultant literally within 3 days. And I had consulting success, which for those of you who have been consultants or are consultants, you'll know what I'm talking about. I basically lived in airports and hotels. And it was fun, and I mean, I traveled a lot of places. I met a lot of people. I, had interesting adventures. I made a lot of money. I bought a lot of nice stuff. I had a big house and cars and all this. And I was never home to enjoy any of the stuff that I got because I was always on the road and having interesting adventures, making more money and traveling around, and et cetera, et cetera. So after a couple of years, even though it was very interesting, I was burnt. I'm like, okay, I got to come off the road. I can't keep doing this. And so I tried my hand at a bunch of businesses from my home or based around my home. And if you name it, I probably had some version of whatever business you could think of. And some of those businesses made me money. Some of those businesses cost me money. Some of those businesses made me friends. Some of those businesses cost me friends. And after all was said and done, I actually ended up rolling out of this entire experience and becoming a business coach. And I really enjoyed business coaching. The small issue I had, though, was that I felt a little out of integrity. And the reason was that I had been successful. I had made it. But if you had asked me, Eric, how did you make it? I couldn't tell you. I kind of stumble-bummed my way to success. So because I was feeling out of integrity, I said, look, if I'm going to be helping people to build their businesses, I got to be teaching them something that I know works. And for me, sales and marketing is what worked. So I took it upon myself to go out and study with the best sales and marketing people that I could find. Now, if I told you some of these people's names, you would know them right off the bat. Other people I studied with are everyday working-class heroes in America and throughout the world, actually, that you've never heard of. And I studied all my mentors at a conscious level. I call them my mentors because they are, and they were, and they are. I studied them at a conscious level, which means I asked them, and I learned from them what they knew that they did that made them successful. And because I am also a master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming, and I've studied that and other cognitive behavioral systems, I understand that human beings work 99% subconsciously and only 1% consciously. So I studied my mentors not just at the conscious level, but I also studied my mentors at a subconscious level. I wanted to know what they did that they didn't know that they did that made them successful. And by combining what I learned from them consciously and subconsciously, I put those two pieces together. And because I love Bruce Lee, I've been a martial artist for 20-plus years. I love Bruce Lee. I love the way that he did martial arts and the way that he taught martial arts. I applied his framework for martial arts to how I do my training and working with clients on sales and marketing. And by putting all that together, that became the Guru selling system. Now, since putting together the Guru selling system, I've had the joy of being able to work with CEOs, CMOs, CSOs, CROs, MOUSCs all over the world. And what I've discovered in working with all these different people and all these different companies is that up to 90% of the sales issues that arise during a sales process, now that might be not enough leads, or the sales cycle takes too long, or we have too low of a conversion rate, or we're getting too many objections, or we're getting asked for too many proposals, or getting too much price cut, blah, blah, blah. Almost any of these problems, up to 90% of these issues, I mean, maybe even more, but 90% of these issues can actually be handled best during the whole lead generation process, all the way at the beginning. So I said, okay, look, if there was going to be a process, a lead generation process that worked like this, that handled these issues, how would it function? What would it have to do? By sitting down and putting that all together, that became the front-loaded lead generation methodology, and that's the technology behind what we're going to be talking about today. So what are we talking about today? We are talking about lead generation messages, but let's just dive a little bit into lead generation first to test your knowledge a little bit. Now first, what is the smallest component of your overall lead generation efforts? Well, the answer is a lead generation message. So you might have a campaign that consists of, I don't know, 3 emails and 2 webinars and whatever else. But the message, the small message, and just one of those small, like one of those little letters or something that you're sending out, emails, letters, whatever it is, that is the smallest component of your overall, this big lead generation system you've got. That's the smallest component of it, that message. Now, what has to happen, or sorry, what is the purpose of a lead generation message? Well, see, this is where it gets a little hinky, because people start saying, well, you know, this is where I educate my market, or this is where I do brand awareness. The truth is, a lead generation message only has one purpose. It's to get leads to contact you. It's kind of like a dead giveaway, you know. What's a lead generation message? And finally, what has to happen for a lead generation message to be effective? Well, 3 things. First, it has to get attention. You have to get the attention of your target market. If not, all the time and energy that went into this was a waste. Secondly, it has to be observed to the end, which means if it's an email, it has to be read to the end. If it's a video, it has to be watched to the end. If that does not happen, again, all the time and energy and money that went into getting this message out there was a waste. And finally, it has to create a desired response. So, hopefully, at the end of your message, you have something you want people to do. And if they don't do that thing, again, all the time, money, and energy that went into getting that message out there in front of that person was a waste. So we want to eliminate that. So how do we eliminate those problems? Well, we do that with the 3 C's of an effective lead generation message. And we'll be going over those in the rest of this webinar. But just so you understand, C1 leads to C2, leads to C3. They build on each other. And you'll see why as we go forward. So let's get rolling right into it. So what is C number 1? Well, C number 1 is if it is the beginning of our message, the first contact that somebody has with our message. So our headline, if it's an email, our subject line, our subject line if it's an email, our headline if it's an article or a blog, etc. Now, what do we normally do at this point in time? Well, we will start with, if we sell products, we'll start by saying, you know, we sell widgets, or if we sell a service, we do widgeting, or we'll throw out the, we have the best price widgets, the best service widgets, the best quality widgets, widgets with the most experience, or anything else like that. And again, this is the standard way that we would, you know, create or start our messages. There's just a few little problems you're not aware of when you start your messages this way. First, no one cares what you sell. Nobody woke up this morning and said, boy, I can't wait for Steve to call me up and tell me how great his widgets are. It just doesn't happen. See, people care about what they care about. So I call this the drumbeat in the back of the head. Because what happens is we have hundreds, maybe thousands of quote-unquote problems that we could, should, would solve if the universe was a perfect place. For example, you woke up this morning, you put your socks on, and all of a sudden you realize there's a hole in one of your socks. But it's also your last pair of brown socks, and you've got brown shoes, and you've got to get out the door, so you're not going to stop and, you know, go wash another pair of socks or go buy, you know, say, yeah, okay, throw the shoe on, boom, problem solved. So we have hundreds of holes in our socks that we can care about. But at the end of the day, we only have the bandwidth to care about 2, maybe 3 big problems on an ongoing basis. And in my realm, in the B2B realm, pretty much it's the same 3 problems day in and day out. That's what people really care about, not you, not your product or service. Secondly, you are sending your message into the I already know what that is and I don't need it box in their head. So, for example, if you do chiropractic, if you go up to somebody or your message says, hey, we do chiropractic, then what happens is this. A box in the mind of the person listening to you opens up and it says one of 2 things. It either says, A, I already know what a chiropractor is. I already have one, therefore I do not need you. Or B, I already know what a chiropractor is. I've decided I do not need one, therefore I do not need you. Either way, you are then swallowed up into that box and lumped in with every other chiropractor that they know that they don't need. And it's almost impossible to get out. And finally, and worst of all, your message is totally ignored. So you can keep going, you can keep talking, you can have more in your text, more text in your email, more video in your video, but nobody's going to keep paying attention. So, why do we do this? How do we get ourselves into this predicament? Well, first off, it's because of what everybody else does, right? Because when we go out there and we don't know what we're doing, we look at what our competition, quote-unquote competition, is doing. We say, hey, if they're doing that and they're saying that, then I'm going to do that and I'm going to say that. Because obviously, they must know what they're doing. It couldn't possibly be that they're clueless too. Okay, So we follow along with them. Secondly, you want to get it out there. So look, Eric, I can't magically wait for, for hope that people will, find me. I've got to do something. I got to get something out there. And it's true. And I agree with you. You got to get something out there. And third, most importantly, you don't know any different. See, right now we're talking about creating lead generation messages. Now, whatever service you render or product you sell, we want you to be really, really good at creating that product or rendering that service. That's what you've trained for. That's what you're after. That's what your passion is. That's what we want you to be good at. The fact is, that's what you've spent all your time learning how to do. Very few people have actually spent the time learning how to create effective lead generation messages. There's just a small minority of us, and we're pretty much insane. Okay, well, we have a good time. But again, you've been trained into doing what you're doing, and we want you to be really good at that. So you're doing the best you can with what you've got. But what's the big problem? Well, the big problem is that the opening of your lead generation message makes no impact on the prospect. It gets no attention, and rule number one is I've got to get the attention of my target market. If not, all else has failed. So the person's what is important to me filter kicks on and kicks the message out of their attention instantly. You say, Eric, what's important to me filter? Well, think about this. You're not paying attention to your left pinky toe, and now you are. Now, that little sucker's been with you your entire life, and you were ignoring it because you're a bad person. No, I'm just kidding. You're fine. The reason you could ignore it and not worry about it is simply because your subconscious said, hey, look, I've got this covered. Because what happens is that the subconscious mind gives the conscious mind a very, very, very narrow bandwidth of conscious awareness. Now, why does the subconscious mind do this? Well, for one very simple reason. Look around the room you're in right now. Go ahead, take a look. Look at all the stuff in the room. Great. Gather it all in. Now imagine if you try to concentrate on every single last little detail of everything in the room around you right now simultaneously. Your brain would explode in a second because you can't consciously handle it all. The subconscious is running all of this stuff. That's why it gives us this very narrow bandwidth so that we don't blow up our brains. So the subconscious, in order to do this, has set up all these filters. So when a lead generation message comes along, the subconscious mind goes, oh, okay, and it starts running it through the filters, and it says, oh, I've heard that statement before, I've seen that name before, and it automatically starts saying, okay, this is not something that we have to pay attention to, and it just gets rid of them, one after another, after another, after another. And if you don't believe me, think about your day today. I'll guarantee you have deleted at least one email today without reading it, probably a dozen. And if I asked you 3 seconds after you deleted that email, what was the subject line or who was it from, you couldn't tell me. Why? Because your subconscious mind took care of it for you. It's the one that moved your hand over and made you hit the delete button long before you even consciously thought about it. So we've got to get past these subconscious filters in order for people to pay attention to our message. So how do we do this? Well, we do this with C number 1, which is context. So what we want to do is we want to create something called, establish meaningful context. So what does this mean to me? What does this message mean to me? So for our purposes, context equals the parts of a discourse that surround a word or passage and can throw light on its meaning. They say, Eric, it's a bunch of highfalutin gobbledygook. So what are you really telling me here? Well, basically, let me make it easy for you. Context means I'm going to say something to you, and you're instantly going to know why it's important to you, why it's important to you, what it means to you, how it applies to you, and whether or not you want to keep listening. Boom, that's it. That's what context does. So we want to create, when we're creating context with our headlines, we want to create something called somatic impact. Now, soma is Latin. It means body. So we want to create body impact. So we want the person's body, or more importantly, their body brain, to respond to the message, to our headline, to our opening. I want the body brain to move the hand and click the play button on the video. I want the body brain to move the hand and hit the open button on the email. Now, you're sitting there and you're saying, Eric, what the hell are you talking about? What's a body brain? Well, let me ask you a question here. How many brains do you have? Now, you might say, Eric, look, I was in high school. I wasn't the greatest in biology, but I'm pretty sure I got one brain in my head. And you're right. You only have one brain in your skull. But you actually have 2 brains in your body. Because aside from the gray matter in your head, you also have something called the enteric nervous system. And the enteric nervous system is just that. It's a nervous system. But it surrounds, it's inside our body. It's our gut. Basically, it goes from our throat our stomach to our intestines and all the way down to the nasty bits we won't talk about right now. Now, why should you care about the enteric nervous system, though? Well, a couple of reasons. Number one, it has as many neurons and neurotransmitters in it as in the first brain in your head, or the gray matter in your head. Secondly, more importantly, it can learn and remember just like the brain in your head. But here is the main reason you should really, really, really pay attention to the enteric nervous system. It creates gut feelings. Now go back to your sales 101. Remember, people buy based on their feelings and then justify later with logic, which means people buy based on their enteric nervous system and then justify later with the gray matter in their head. So ultimately, we're going to have to sell to the enteric nervous system. So if we're ultimately going to be selling to the enteric nervous system, doesn't it make total sense then we should also be aiming our lead generation at it as well? So what are the benefits to you of setting up, creating somatic impact with your headlines? Well, first, you have their total attention. See, in order for anybody to get, to be responding, they have to give you their attention. If they're not responding, then they're not giving you their attention. So you're going to have their total attention once you've got them by the gut. Secondly, they know what you're talking about. Boom, the context has been set. They know why it's important to them, and they're hooked, and they're going to keep going with you. Third, they are in a heightened feeling state. Now, this is pretty cool. In order for you to have somatic impact, again, we're talking to the gut. You have to create some sort of feeling in this person. And when people start having feelings, they start getting into heightened feeling states, as opposed to the boredom, that neutral thing that I feel most of the day. They start getting into a heightened feeling state. And that excitement, what we've learned through accelerated learning, is that when people are in a heightened feeling state, they actually are able to intake more information, process more information, and apply more information faster. So in order for that whole education thing to go on, you want to get them into that heightened feeling state. And finally, they are already looking for a resolution. Now, this is really cool. See, once you've gotten somebody excited, you've gotten them into a heightened feeling state, they don't want to stay there forever. They can't. They're going to be like, I'm all excited. Now you got to get me, now you got to bring me down. So they're looking at you and they're saying, hey, you're the one who said whatever to get me into this heightened feeling state. I need you to tell me what I need to know so I can come back down to feeling normal, which puts you in the position of a solution provider to them at a subconscious level up front, which is an incredibly powerful position to come from as you go forward. And you say, okay, Eric, this all sounds well, nice and good, but is it real? Does it really work? Well, let's find out. So if I say to you soda, soda pop, carbonated beverage, soft drink, right now, there's a few little electrical flickers going on in the gray matter in your head, and you're saying, yes, conceptually, I know what Eric's talking about. I know what soda pop is. You're not feeling anything. You're just understanding the concept. But if I say Coca-Cola, and all of a sudden I show you the Coca-Cola symbol, and if you like Coca-Cola or if you know what it tastes like, all of a sudden the taste buds in the back of your tongue are starting to tingle. Same thing that if I show you the Pepsi symbol, except now the taste buds on the front of your tongue where your sweeter taste buds are starting to tingle. And if you're like me and you know what both of them taste like, your tongue is having a tug of war. Congratulations, you're having a somatic response. So let's say, for example, that I want to get the attention of Coca-Cola fans. I don't want root beer people, I don't want 7-Up people, I don't want Pepsi people, just want my hardcore Coca-Cola people. And I go out there and I put out some message that says something along the lines of, hey, all you Coca-Cola fans, guess what? They're thinking about screwing with the formula again, just like they did back in the 80s. To learn more, click here. Boom. Okay, all of a sudden I put that little link, they're going to start running it. Why? Because I'm creating that somatic response. So all of my hardcore Coca-Cola people are going to go check it out. Now, I might get some Pepsi people or some root beer people who are interested. They're just curious what's going on. But that's not who I was after. I was after those hardcore Coca-Cola people, and I'm getting them with that somatic response. So that's the type of somatic response that we're talking about when we're talking about creating our headlines that way. Now, that brings us to C number 2. Now, what is C number 2? Well, C number 2 is once we've gotten into the message. So we've gotten past the headline, and we've gotten into the actual body of the message. Now, just a little thing for you here. We lose up to 82% of people based on our headline. So bad headlines lose us up to 82% of people. We also lose an additional 15% of people based on what we say in the body of the message. So that on average, that leaves the average person or the average message with 3 people left at the end to decide whether or not they're going to respond to your message. So it's very important that we have power, that we go well into our headline, or sorry, into the body of our message. Now, once we've gotten past the headline, what might we do? Well, we might start into our message with something like a testimonial, like, John's a great guy. Him and his team came over here last week and fixed our roof in a couple of hours, and that night it rained buckets and not a drop got in the house. I can't recommend these guys enough. Or we might start with our mission statement, something like, here at ABC Corporation, we are devoted to the highest level of widget production in North America, and we wish to be the market leader, and all that garbage. We might start with benefits, something like, how'd you like to gain 20 pounds or lose 20 pounds? Or how'd you like to improve productivity by 20% or decrease costs by 80% or something like that? And again, this is the standard way that most people would get into the body of their message. Just a few little problems you're not aware of when you get into the body of your message this way. First, you usually create confusion because it usually does not flow from the headline. So again, as I said, a lot of times you're lucky to get people to the headline just based on the headline quality. But let's say that you get them past that headline. If you don't basically connect to that headline, and a lot of people don't, if you don't connect to that headline in the first paragraph if it's something written, or the first 10 to 15 seconds if it's something video, then all of a sudden the subconscious, and again, this is all going on at the subconscious level, the subconscious mind says, well, I don't understand. Based on the headline or the title, I thought this video or this email was going to be about this, or this article was going to be about that. And if you get confusion, all of a sudden the subconscious mind says, well, I'm out of here. So if we don't connect, again, within the first few seconds to our headline in some way, shape, or form, then we lose people. And a lot of times people, when we're writing our messages, what happens is we don't refer back to our headline until like paragraph 3 or a minute and a half into the video or something. And by then, the confused minds are all gone, which is most people. Another problem is the whole making it when it looks long, but people think they'll get to it later. So when I deal with some people, some clients, they'll say, great, here's the 85 things people need to know before they buy from me. And so they'll create this mission. They'll say, once I've got their attention, now I can use it however I want. I've got them past the headline. Boom, I'm going to take their attention. I'm going to do what I want with it. So I create a 12-page email, or I create a 25-minute video for them to watch. And the person who gets it, the prospect, might say, hey, this interesting headline. You've got me into the body. This means something to me, but I certainly wasn't ready to make a 25 or 30-minute investment of time into this information. So let me put it on my to-do list. And as we all know, to-do pile, and as we all know, the to-do pile becomes the to-didn't-do pile very quickly. And so your message, again, never gets gotten to. And finally, and worst of all, the prospect loses interest and signs off. The truth is most people don't really know how to create a message or create the body of a message that makes people want to stay until the end. And if a person loses interest, boom, they're gone, and so is the opportunity. Now, how do we do this? How do we get into this problem? Well, first off, you say, well, you're trying to say your piece. Say, look, Eric, I got to say something in my message. And it's true. You can't put a blank message out there and hope that somebody's going to respond to you. And now you might say, oh, once I've gotten past the headline, now they care about what I do or what I sell. No, they still don't care about you or your product or your service. They still only care about themselves and their problems. And again, you're doing the best you can with what you've got. Again, most people have just never been trained in this, and so we're following along. We're doing the best we can. We're struggling with what we know and working with the limited resources that we have. Well, what's the real problem? Well, the real problem is that you may have captured their attention with your opening, but then you instantly let go of it. And again, what do we got to do? We got to keep those people's attention to the end. If we let go of it, then we have lost the opportunity with these folks. So how do we hold on to their attention? We do that with C number 2, which is content. And before you think, oh, he's talking about content marketing. No, I am not talking about content marketing. Content marketing is a completely different subject, which unfortunately is not very effective at all, especially without C number 1, which is context. But for what we're looking for here with content is we must have logical progression of content. We have to have a logical progression of content within the message. So for our purposes, content equals the presentation of information for a purpose to an audience through a medium. And say, Eric, that's a whole bunch of gobbledygook again. Can you give me something normal? Okay. So just put in that statement right there, the word purpose is actually the important part. So content basically means I'm gonna put some information together. I'm gonna give it to you, and I have a reason. I have a purpose with this information, something I want to accomplish. And in the lead generation message, we have actually two purposes. Number one is to keep the prospect's attention from the beginning until the end of the message. That is key. I have to get them from the beginning to the end. The second thing that I'm focusing on in the lead generation message is that I want to tweak just slightly enough the prospect's mindset so that by the end of the message, they are geared up, effectively geared up to respond to me, to contact me, to be interested in my product or my service. That's it. Not a hardcore, trying to convince 20 different ways, just enough to get them interested to respond to me. That's it. That's all with the content. Okay? So when I think about this, what I really think about is guiding people. We want to guide people through our information. So when I think about that, I think about this great tradition in China. And there's this tradition in China which says that a good host walks their guest part of the way home. The better a host you are, the further home you walk your guest. And obviously the best hosts are the ones who walk their guests all the way home, which makes me believe that in China probably we don't have a lot of out-of-town visitors. I don't want to be getting on airplanes all the time. So same thing with us when we create a lead generation message. So when so just like your home or something, when you invite somebody into your home, you don't throw the door open and say, figure it out for yourself. You say, come on in, this is the foyer, this is the kitchen, this is the bathroom, this is that, you can go here, do this, do that. You show them around. You make sure they understand things. Same thing with our messages. We have to guide people through our messages. We want to guide them from the beginning to the end. So what I want to do with my message is that I want to say something that makes sense in connection to the somatic impact that I made with my headline, but then offers the chance for something better by the end of the message. Basically, I want to take people from point A to point B as effectively as possible so that I can interest them in contacting me at some point in the future. Now, what are the benefits to you of structuring your content this way? First, you keep their attention to the end, which is paramount. Again, rule number 2, got to keep their attention to the end. If I don't, all else has failed. Secondly, I build rapport. Now, this is pretty cool. Rapport obviously helps to accelerate the sales cycle. So when we start creating messages and putting them out there and people are reading them, they begin to create subconscious rapport with us. And they begin to believe that they know us even though they don't. How do I know this is true? Because you right now have at least one favorite singer or actor or actress or something like that, somebody you're really a fan of, that if you sat down but happened to accidentally sit down next to them in an airplane, you would think you already know this person. Well, I've seen all their films, I've listened to all their music, I've watched their interviews and stuff like that. So you have this rapport with this person even though you've never met them. Why? Because you've been in contact with the content that they've put out there. So the more that people listen to you and everything else like that, at a subconscious level, they start to create rapport with you even though they've never met you. You also build credibility, which is aligned with the rapport piece. So the more information, the more content you can put out there, and the more points that you can raise that are issues with your client, the more points that you can raise and then validate, the more credibility you have. And the more of that you do, the more credibility that you have, the more rapport that you have, the more people are going to engage you, and the faster they're going to go through the sales process with you. And finally, you deliver people to scene number 3, which we will get to next. But you say, okay, Eric, but is this true? Does this really work? Well, I'll give you an example from my own business. So a couple of years ago had some clients from California contact me. Now, they were a pricing strategy consulting firm. Basically, they went into companies and helped companies to figure out how to price their products or services to be competitive. Now, when they called me, they had already been in business for about 3 years. There was about 6 or 7 of these guys, and they were struggling to make $400,000 a year. $400,000 a year, split 6 or 7 ways, plus overhead, not a lot of money. Okay, and their entire lead generation process was basically sending out hundreds of thousands of spam emails every week to anybody and everybody that they could get emails that they could get their hands on. And they kept getting blacklisted and spam listed and this and that and having to go to this server. And they were masters of evading. But I'm still amazed that the cops didn't just kick the door down and arrest all of them for this stuff. So when they contacted, and the outcome was that even though they were sending out all these emails, they were talking to 1, maybe 2 prospects a month. That's it. So they call me up and they say, Eric, you got to help us. So I said, okay, and they explained to me what was going on. And I said, all right, number 1, stop sending out emails. Like, no, you're not allowed to email anybody until we set things up. So, so I said, okay, we're done with that. Now, let's take this down. Let's focus this. So who are you after? Who's your target market? Anybody with money. Let's try again. Who's your target market? Anybody who'll pay us. And we kept going around and around until we finally came down to a couple of niche markets that we're going to go after. And the first one we decided to go after was CEOs of mid-market companies. Did a little bit of research, found out that what they cared about was something called legacy. Now, what is legacy? Well, legacy is basically the performance of the company under the watch of that CEO. Now, why do CEOs care about legacy? Well, a couple of reasons. Number 1, if they're a mid-market CEO and they leave the company they're in, they might just want to go up and work at a Fortune and be a CEO at a Fortune 500 company. That's not going to happen if your legacy at your previous company was bad. Or you might want to leave your current company and go write a book and do some speaking. Again, not going to happen if your legacy at your previous company was bad. Or you might want to leave that company and then go sit on boards or be a chairman at another company. Again, not going to happen if your legacy at your previous company was bad. So legacy was pretty important to them. I said, okay, great. Then all we're going to do is we're going to send a message out, send out an email that connects legacy to pricing strategy consulting. They say, Eric, how the heck could you do that? Well, very simple. We just connected the dots. We said, you're a CEO. You care about legacy. Legacy is tied to performance. Performance is tied mostly to revenue. Revenue is tied mostly to sales. Sales is driven a lot by pricing, mostly by pricing. If you don't have a strategy for pricing effectively, you're going to need one, and therefore you're going to need a pricing strategy consultant. Boom, boom, boom. A, B, C, D. We just connected the dots for them. I said, okay, great. We created the email. I said, you're now allowed to send that email out to 300 people a week. And they were like, 300? 300,000? No, 300 people a week. At least 3,000. No, just 300. They angrily agreed and sent them on their way. 6 weeks later, I get a phone call. They say, Eric, we stopped marketing. I said, well, what the heck would you do that for? Because they were not days. They were not weeks. They were months. Months behind in getting back to all the people who had been responding to their emails. Remember, they went from 2 freaking leads a month to now being months behind in 6 weeks to responding to all the people that they were interested in them now. Needless to say, they very quickly went over 7 figures and never looked back. Now, did we say anything magical in this email or anything? No. Basically the same stuff they had been saying. It was just the way we structured it. And most importantly, we structured it in order to retain the prospect's interest from the beginning until the end. And that made all the difference. That brings us to C number 3, our final C. So what is C number 3? Well, C number 3 is the end. We get to the end of our lead generation message. And what do we normally do? Well, we say something like, for more information, call 1-800, tell me more stuff. Or to have one of our agents contact you, please fill in this form. Or, hey, I'm going to be in your area next week to schedule a meeting with me. Hey, send me an email at blah, blah, blah. And again, this is the common way that we might end our lead generation messages. There's just a few little headaches you're not aware of when you end your messages this way. First, the flow is broken because up to now the person has been receiving and learning. Now, what does that mean? So when the person starts reading your email or watching your video or whatever, they're engaged. Their subconscious mind said, okay, I'm going to, I agree to read this message or watch this video or whatever. And they say, oh, okay, this is good content, blah, 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 blah. And you're with them the entire way. All right, you say, okay, they see there's more, there's a couple more paragraphs. Okay, I'm still interested. There's a couple more minutes in this video. I'm still interested. And then they get to the end, and you say, for more information about what? To learn more. To do what am I supposed to do with learning more? How does that help me? And all of a sudden you're gone. You take them to the end, boom, you're gone. For more information. No, we're not going to tell you how it helps you. We're just going to say, for more information, boom, and then we're going to leave you. And what's happening is they don't know what's coming next. You've been with them the whole way, and all of a sudden you disappear, and they don't know what's behind the door that you're telling them to go through. And see, people are inherently resistant to action. More appropriate to say the subconscious mind is inherently resistant to action because it's always looking for a way to break away. So it gets to the end of the message and it says, hey, you know what? I agreed to watch this video or to read this email, and I have fulfilled my agreement, and now I'm going to take my body back, and I'm going to finish my pastrami sandwich. Thank you very much. Goodbye. And why does this happen? Because one very important question has not been answered. Why should I? Why should I? Why should I contact you? Why should I get more information? And until that question is answered, nobody is going to go any further. So why do we do this? How do we get into this problem? Well, you say, Eric, I want them to contact me. And it's true, yes, I know you want them to contact you. And you say, hey, this is the logical thing, right? I'm offering them the opportunity to contact me. Isn't that logical? Well, it might be logical. It doesn't mean it's effective. And you say, but what else can I do? Well, we'll give you an example in a minute. But first, what's the real problem? Well, the real problem is that you dropped the ball when it matters most. So you got them past the headline. Woohoo! You got them from the beginning to the end of the message. Yes! Then you took them to that door and you disappeared and you left them high and dry. And they don't know what to do. They don't know why they're going to go any further. So how do we not drop the ball? Well, we not drop the ball with C number 3, which is call to action. So what we want to do is we want to create a desirable call to action. We want to create desire with our call to action. So people are like, yes, 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 I want that. So for our purposes, call to action equals words that urge the viewer of a lead generation message to take an immediate action. Say, Eric, you giving me that gobbledygook again? Tell it to me straight. All right. Call to action basically means I'm going to make an offer, and you're going to go yes. And you're going to do it right now. This isn't a call to thinking about it. It isn't a call to pondering. It's a call to action. Boom. Here's the offer. Boom. Jump on it now. That's what a call to action is all about. So what we want to do is we want to create a no-brainer for the person to say, yes, I want that, and I want that now. So I'm going to give you an example of a horrible call to action so that you could see the exact opposite of what you should do. So a while back, I was asked to review a video for a reverse mortgage company. And I'm watching this video, and they got it pretty right. They had, they hired some nice-looking older actors and actresses. They got the, hired grandkids in the yard, out in front of the house. We're all playing in the garden. Walks in the evening on the street and right in front of my house. Blah blah blah. Everything's wonderful. Okay. Oh, for those of you who don't know what reverse mortgages are so when seniors are living in their homes, they don't have enough income, and banks loan them money against the value of their home, so they can continue to live in their home for the however long they want to. It's a very nice thing. Anyway, so I'm watching this video, and like I said, they had everything right, and all of a sudden they get towards the end of the video and they say, call us now and we'll send you, and all of a sudden in the middle of the screen appears this big picture of the world's butt ugliest trucker baseball cap with the company's logo on it. I almost fell out of my frickin' chair when this thing came on. I was like, no! And it's like, this is the worst thing in the world. And I said to them, you probably would have lost 50 to 60% of people instantly by putting that out there. Why? Because confusion. I mean, first off, what does a baseball hat have to do with reverse mortgages? Absolutely freaking nothing. Nothing at all. Okay? So, and I said, look, you're dealing with older people, and I know why you put it up there, right? You think, these are older people, they want hats, right? Because let me tell you something about older people. They've been around a long time. They know the sun is out there. They know the sun is not good for them in large doses. They already have hats to keep the sun off them. And even if they don't have any hats, I'm sure they'd rather die from skin cancer than wear that ugly thing you're showing me right now. So, obviously got rid of the baseball cap, changed it up, and put it out there. But that is an example of the kind of call to action that's going to screw you up and you don't want to use. So what are the benefits to you of creating a desirable call to action? And again, we will give you an example in a second. First, you create immediate desire. That's the whole thing. If people are immediately desiring, then they're more likely to act. If people are more likely to act, guess what? You might have more leads in your pipeline. And finally, and this is pretty cool, it becomes a powerful differentiator. So if you're in a marketplace where everybody else says for more information, for more information, for more information, and all of a sudden you have a different call to action, automatically that is powerful for you, and that makes a big difference. Now, you say, Eric, this all sounds well, fine, and good, but tell me, tell me if this really works in the real world. Well, I'll tell you from my own personal experience. So as I told you at the beginning of the webinar, I became a business coach. Now, when I became a business coach, I was making quite a lot of money. I was making well over 6 figures. And I was making well over 6 figures because I had a lot of clients. The problem was I had a lot of clients paying me a little bit of money. And I was busting my hump all freaking day. I was on that phone 10 hours a day, and by the end of the day, my head hurt. And my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, I barely got to see her, and even when I saw her, I was so friggin' exhausted. I was like, ah. So after a couple months, I said, all right, look, I'm greedy just like everybody else. I want to do less and make more. So I wanted to go after bigger clients. So I needed time, though. I didn't have the time to do the lead generation to go after the bigger clients. So I said, okay, I'm going to get rid of a few of my current clients that I have more time. I made a little bit of a mistake and kind of got to the point where I got rid of so many clients that I was all of a sudden down to the equivalent of $30,000 a year. And I was like, oh, my God, I can't survive like that. So I went running out there, and I was doing my lead generation. I kept saying to all these bigger clients, I said, let's have a meeting. Let's have a phone call. Let's have a meeting. Let's have a phone call. And nobody was responding. I was like, oh, my God. So I went to one of my mentors, and I said to her, I said, here's what I'm doing, and here's the response I'm not getting. She laughed, and she said, of course you're not getting a response. I said, Eric, think about this. You're talking to these larger business folks, and these people have meetings and phone calls all day long with people they already know for reasons they already understand. Why would they want to have one with you? And I was like, oh, my God. Kicked myself in the butt, went home with my tail between my legs, and the next day got out there and changed it up. So the next day I started offering something called a money jumpstart session. Money, because the people I was after were small business owners who wanted to increase the amount of money coming in. Jumpstart, because it was an action word. It sounded like we were going to do something. And session, because it sounded cooler than meeting. I also offered 2 bullet points as add-ons to this, or to clarify it. I said, number 1, I'm going to review your current business processes. And secondly, I'm going to offer you at least one strategy that you can use right now to increase your sales by at least 20% or more in the next 90 days or less. And I was always true to my word. What happened? Within 3 months, 3 little months, I went from struggling for the equivalent of $30,000 a year to well over 6 figures again. Now, did I do anything magical in these meetings or these phone calls that was different from the beginning? No. The only difference was the way I positioned my call to action. That made all the difference. So, to summarize, number 1, make sure that your message opening sets a context for the prospect so they know what you're talking about. Number 2, make sure your message content guides the prospect logically from point A to point B. And finally, make sure that your call to action creates desire in the prospect. Anyway, that brings me to the end, so thank you guys for being here, and thank you for being so patient and letting us work out our technical difficulties. And Rich and Clinton, are you guys on the line?
Yes, we are. Thank you so much. It was a great one, Eric. I appreciate that very much. And I just, move over to Clinton. Clinton, just a couple more points before we could, wind up. I know we're, overboard, so I appreciate all your patience. Clinton, here you go.
Thank you, Rich. So in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to show you something that's better than InMail. Well, if you haven't heard of InMail, that means you're not on LinkedIn, but InMail is one of the best ways to contact people, or that's what LinkedIn says. Well, pop quiz, what's better than InMail? Well, it's email. Email's free, email's easy to get across, and with email, you can actually put the guru selling system to work. So what's the problem with email? Well, if you know LinkedIn, LinkedIn is one of the best places to find your prospects, find your future customers over there. And even though this screenshot of LinkedIn is a little bit dated, well, you get the idea. You know how to find people over there, and LinkedIn has about 300 million people out there. That's a lot of people who you can find your prospects in. But the problem with this is, unless you can get connected to them, and most people don't, spend the mornings on LinkedIn. They're spending their mornings on email, and they're spending their mornings on the phone. So unless you can get connected to them, you don't have the email, because LinkedIn doesn't give you the email of anybody who's your second-degree connection. And even if you send them a request, we're waiting on the other side for them to accept your request. Or if you send an email, which costs you about $10, well, LinkedIn keeps you waiting until they respond to your email. And worse of that, if they tag you and they say, I don't know this person who's contacting me, Okay? And sometimes I get that if I'm trying to do a sales pitch. Then LinkedIn will block you out of your account, and you won't be able to send anybody any information. You won't be able to log into your LinkedIn account unless you talk to LinkedIn support and then get some access to it. So what if you want to prospect on LinkedIn and you want to send people emails and put a good email in place? What would you do from here? Well, that's what a lot of our customers asked us, because we've been in the business for about 15 years, and they asked us, what can we do with LinkedIn? We need an email for LinkedIn. So being a software company, we went and created a little button we call the account researcher. So as soon as you click that little button, what it does is this little software, this little program gets you the person's business email address. Now, how cool is that? So like anyone you like, you input a name and a company, and press a button, and you get a business email address that you can use. Now, if you're wondering, hey, this sounds a little too good to believe, do you have a database? Where do you get it from? Well, let me show you that what I did just before the webinar. And this is like 5 minutes before the webinar started. I picked up a random selection of people from my own LinkedIn connections, to second degree, third degree onwards. Okay? And then I took the name of the company and put it into my account researcher tool, and there you go. That's Chris's contact information. And here's another one. Here's Philip. That's his email address and phone number. And a third one, here's Kevin's email address and phone number. And all these will typically be my ideal prospects who I'll be trying to sell my software to. And guess what? Where did this software find somebody's email address from? That's a thing that a lot of people ask us. And what we do is we take a name and a company and we search the zillions of documents on the internet like you would do using a Google and using a browser. So we search the internet, and you'd be surprised how many people leave their contact information on the internet. How many people leave their email address and the phone number. They might have a discussion, say, hey, call me back at this number, or they might have a slideshow and leave the email address and say, email me about this in case you have any questions. So there's a ton of documents out there, and you'll be surprised as to how many people leave their contact information out there. So if the contact information is there on the internet, the software finds the email address and shows it to you. And if it's not there, what the software does is it does what an intelligent human being would do, like you would do. It looks at the company and says, oh, what is the email pattern that the company has, and based on that, it studies it and says, you know what, this guy's email address, this lady's email address must be this. Okay, so how accurate is this? How good is this? Well, if it's on the internet, we're 95% sure that we're going to get it. And as another proof that it works, hey, we patented this process last year, so it works. Okay? So that's what we have to offer, the eGrabber account researcher software. Okay? You can go to any LinkedIn profile or enter any name or company, press a button, and get that person's email address. We don't have a database. We take it straight from the internet, the free internet that's out there. Oh, and by the way, in case you have a CRM, you press another button, it can go straight into your Salesforce or any other CRM. Erik, you've had a go of the software, so how much do you think it's worth? What value do you find in the software that we're selling right now?
Well, I mean, ultimately, it's priceless, because if you look at it, and it's a great question. As you pointed out, LinkedIn is purposely limited in how much you can do. Why? Because their entire thing is to charge you money to access to their information. Now, I get that. That's their business model. By the same token, that keeps you from being able to access a lot of, because you have, all of a sudden you start looking at your budget that you can spend annually or monthly on lead generation. All of a sudden you say, well, now I'm limited, because every time I'm looking for a name, I'm coughing up money. Whereas with this, you can create a database which is yours to own and do with it as you please. And also, as Clinton said, you get the ability to hit this person again and again and again. Whereas on LinkedIn, sometimes you start harassing people, or even a person doesn't like your first email or something, they can start creating trouble for you. And trust me, I've been there. I've been kicked off LinkedIn, the magical, wonderful LinkedIn, for perceived, grievances against people or something. It's very finicky and it's very expensive. It's a great gathering of information. and you don't want to be bound by the hip to it. So this gives you the freedom to access that information and to access that as your initial research site, and allows you also, without having to pay for it, without having to go to 85 different websites to try and find the information. This is gathering it in seconds for you. So, or even compare this to the cost of buying a database. I mean, when you start looking at, if you start looking for, you start looking at good databases, you're looking, you're starting at maybe $1 a name, and that's on the low end. A lot of times it's $5 or $10 a name. So just to the cost of if you're buying a database, this makes, economically, it makes more sense, and it also gives you a lot more flexibility. If you're looking at LinkedIn, this gives you the same power and a lot more flexibility. It just makes sense hand over fist.
Okay. That said, that's the end of my presentation, and we're good to take questions at this moment. Maybe we'll take it for another 5 to 10 minutes. Rich?
Yeah, we don't have a lot of questions at this point of time. Erik, I do have a question for you from Akshay. Akshay asks, which is the most effective, is it email marketing or telemarketing?
Which is the most effective?
Yeah.
Well, there's not a, every medium still has its usefulness. That being said, I really think that in today's marketplace, combining mediums is ultimately the most effective. If you're thinking it's also, are you thinking long-term or short-term? Because if you're looking at, fast grab, then sometimes the calling is more effective, or sometimes the email is more effective. But really, you want to combine both. And again, you get the information from from the eGrabber things that you have access to all the information that you need. So really, combining all of them, combining all the different elements is the most effective. Cost but in terms of cost or cost per hour, value per hour. As all the studies do show, ultimately, in terms of a long-term tactic, email is still the most cost and response effective of the mediums. I still encourage, I think people still need phone skills, but if you're just depending on a phone, you're probably cutting your sales by 90%. So really that combination of the two, and if you're going to lean on one, I'd probably lean on email more than I would lean on the calls.
Oh, all right. Okay. Perfect. Erik, a lot of people, they want you to restate your offer and then your URL to reach out to you. Can you paste that on GoToMeeting chat, please?
Sure. Hang on a second. Let me just go here. Oops. And now I've lost it. Technical difficulties. Hang on one second. Let me just copy and paste that here.
All right. So, while Erik is, putting that information on chat, a lot of people have been asking me, how and where can you access the recorded session? Well, good news is, we're going to be hosting this a recorded session on eGrabber's website. So if you go to eGrabber.com by tomorrow, and then on the home page, you would see a webinar archive. So just click on that, and you would be able to see this live tomorrow. So just please give us some time to upload this, and you should be able to do it by tomorrow. Okay, there's Erik's link. Let me copy and paste it and broadcast this to everyone. And just in case you want to go and reach out to Erik, there comes your link. All right. Okay, a couple of you have mentioned that the promo code is not working. Well, no problem. Okay, if it's not working, please send an email to me, and I'll make sure that you get the promo offer, just in case it's not working. Apologies for that. Okay. Erik, here's another question for you. Will your offer be available during the replay period? Bob says he missed the first half of the meeting.
Bob said he missed the first half of the meeting.
He asked, will your offer be available during the replay period too?
I'll bump it out. I'll bump it out 24 hours. Or when do you going live? No, tomorrow. You said the replay goes up.
Yes.
All right. So I'll bump it out to 5 p.m. tomorrow night, Pacific time.
Fantastic. Fantastic. That's great. All right, so I think, that's all we have time for today, but if you do have any questions for Erik or for Clinton or for me, please go ahead and put in a quick email to me. My email is rich@egrabber.com. That's R-I-C-H, rich@egrabber.com. And we'll be happy to get back to you with any answers or any questions you may have. Thank you so much, everyone. You've all been great and patient, and we've been about 20 minutes overboard due to the technical difficulties. I apologize for that, but thanks for joining us, and I do hope you find this informative. Thanks again, Erik. Thanks, Clinton. Make it a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye.